Welcome to Critical Junction episode 23. I'm Mark.
Oh, I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
And joining us today we have Gloria and Bree. Hi guys, thanks for being here.
Hi. Thank you.
So today we're talking about the psychology of subcultures in general, and in particular, Bronies and Furries. So, furries, for those of you who might not be familiar with the term, are those guys who like to dress up in giant animal mascot costumes, or, depending on the media you like to consume, the people who think they're animals and have a weird fetish for fur. So according to an article that came out in Psychology Today, just a couple of quick facts to get us started, about 1 in 7 people within the furry community identify as transgender and are about 5 times more likely to identify as non-heterosexual. And also about 50% of the people studied have reported being bullied at some point in their lives. So just a couple of
What's the percentage on bullying there?
About 50%.
Wait a second. Who's never been bullied before?
It's apparently the other 50% of people who were studied for this.
What was wrong with them?
There's something wrong with you if you never got bullied?
You never got bullied? Yeah, I guess the bully is what you're saying there.
I think they're called the popular people.
The popular people?
Yeah. Not necessarily. Maybe they just never got bullied.
No.
I wasn't particularly bullied in school, but I was definitely not with the popular kids.
No.
But hold on, you've been bullied. Maybe not.
I think it was more. It was more like collateral damage of like a roving gang of popular kids that were going through the halls and bullying anyone that they came across.
So it was like a drive-by bullying?
Yeah, like a drive-by bullying incident.
That still counts.
But it was a single incident, so it doesn't count as like sustained
So there's just dark
harassment
cloud,
that you would call
the dark cloud of
bullying.
popular kids just, hey, you suck, man.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Pushing
Yeah.
people randomly into lockers.
Yeah.
Going by like a swarm of insects.
I think it's the perception that you were bullied in high school or whatever, not university, but elementary school and high school. I think that's more what they're looking for is do you feel like you were an outcast? I think that's where this article is going.
Yeah, probably.
Right. So, all that to say that the furry community is essentially some way for for particular individuals to create a kind of group mentality or an accepting group to kind of protect themselves against that type of abuse that they've felt in childhood or early on in their lives.
Predominantly white male, 18 to 25.
Right. So, not necessarily a sexual thing, but it's...
Very young males. Same thing with bronies.
Yeah, so I get that the bronies is that, but I would have thought that the furries being a much more kind of much more fundamentally about gender bending or identity, like fundamental identity issues, would have kind of spanned the
Predominantly male and predominantly
gender
young,
spectrum a little bit more.
which is kind of strange.
Huh, that is kind of strange, yeah.
It makes sense though, being a place that they're looking for that acceptance, that community, right? Like like we were saying, it's kind of hard to make fun of somebody when you're dressed up like a giant blue raccoon. Like it at its very nature, it's very decentralized and very inclusive. So it makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense.
Well, that was easy.
It's odd,
But I mean, like when you think about these like scritching sessions.
What's scritching?
Let's go ahead and define scritching, shall we?
I mean, I don't have
it's yiffing or scritching or something like that, isn't it?
Is there a difference between
So
the
I
two
think the
terms?
scritching is when it's basically like just rubbing a back or scratching a person or
Through their
fronting
fursuit.
up against
There's a
some kind of thing.
sexual element to furries, which is what
Exactly.
a lot of the media looks at.
Whereas, so the scritching and then what's the other word?
Yiffing?
Yiffing, I think, is when it gets sexual.
Sexual, yes.
Like, in fact, they will bring in like animal chemicals and stuff like that.
Oh, like pheromones? and shit?
Pheromones,
Musk.
yeah.
No.
Well, that was discussed in that CSI episode with the
Oh,
furries,
yes,
was it
yes,
not?
yes.
They talked about, I can't remember what it was that they were throwing at, like someone had something on them, animal scent of some sort. I can't remember what it was.
Probably some kind of
Pheromones.
pheromone.
I don't know if there's. So I always use the word pheromones in the plural, but are there different
There's only one.
individual pheromones? Like, is there a pheromone called something or?
Each breed would probably have their own.
Yeah,
like for
like-
raccoons or for...
Or is it just like a catch-all term for this general?
I don't know enough about them to be able to say one or another.
That's the next episode.
Yes.
We'll look
Pheromones.
at pheromones.
Pheromones.
Episode 24, pheromones.
Poison ivy.
So, yeah. I guess opening thoughts on the issue of let's start with furries.
with this kind of like yiffing stuff, I think Luke, you had mentioned at one point that sometimes they'll have like they'll they'll have like a yiff room, and everybody just kind of throws
like
themselves in a pile and
Rubs up
wiggle and
against
rub
each
around
other.
against each other.
Is this happening?
But they're doing this with you're saying 95% guys in it. So
Right, so you don't actually
So,
know
to a
the
certain
gender
extent,
of the person. They can
you don't
switch
know
genders.
the gender of the person, but technically it's a homosexual activity.
Well, a lot of them, like you said, were transgender, or they did not identify as heterosexual, was what the research found, right?
So that does kind of make sense. I mean, if it's kind of
It's a safe space to explore sexuality,
Yeah.
especially for young
Yeah.
men.
Yeah.
so it's an interesting subculture.
And I
To
think
say
you're
the
reading
least.
not a lot of furries engaged in that sort of
Yeah. So
Oh, okay.
sexuality. Like, there's
It's
a very
not-
minor part of it. It's
Oh,
the
yeah.
same thing as like car enthusiasts and pinup girls, right? They're just sexualizing the material that they're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily a sexual outlet for them. It's just some way of expressing themselves and finding acceptance where they otherwise wouldn't be able to in general society.
Right.
A lot of people who self-identify as furries, according to the article, are typical what we would consider to be outcasts. The sci-fi geeks and the nerds and the people who are heavily into video games and that kind of thing. That's what this research found them to be predominantly based on, or consisting of rather. So, yeah, and essentially it is about finding acceptance. It's about finding that group of people you can identify with and not be bullied by. There are furry conventions and furry parties and whatever. I was at the War Memorial last Remembrance Day here in Ottawa.
Okay.
And after laying down my poppy, I happened to look over to my right, and there were a bunch of what I thought to be sports mascots just hanging out. That is until they unfurled their banner for the photo op. The Ottawa Furry Convention just sprawled across.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how many people
But
would
they
you
were
say that?
co-opting Remembrance Day ceremonies to advertise their,
I don't
their
know if
furry
they-
convention.
I don't know if
That
they were-
sounds a
Two
little
birds with
tasteless.
one stone.
I don't know if they were necessarily co-opting it more than they were just
They just
paying
happen to
their-
be in the
yeah,
same vicinity?
Yeah,
Okay.
they may have just been having a furry outing to pay their respects
Okay.
together. But I don't know. But all I saw was this mass of furries out by the War Memorial, which I found really interesting.
Wow.
I wasn't alone in thinking that there were just a bunch of sports mascots. Other people were
Oh,
like,
yeah?
"Hey, what team do they represent?"
Well, how many would you say? Like, how many people?
How
are
many
we talking
furries
here?
were there?
Yeah,
Sexy
yeah.
tiger.
I would say there were about maybe 20 to 30 furry
Wow.
people.
Okay, yeah, that's
Okay.
quite a large
It was a
gathering.
significant
classroom's
amount.
worth.
Yeah, a significant amount of fursuits.
I was thinking that's brave. Wait a second, they're wearing outfits. No,
Yeah, well, that's
they're all in
anonymity, right?
disguise.
Yeah, it does have an aspect of anonymity to it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't be identified, so you can get away with pretty much anything that you normally wouldn't be able to get away with.
And they were talking about a lot of the furries have what they call fursonas, which
Yeah.
is their idealized person. So they would be Rocky the Raccoon with a cool hat, and they would be, very mysterious and very interesting, whereas the actual person might be super awkward, they might have a lisp, they might be very socially inept, right? And the article was talking about how, over time, the actual person's personality moves more towards their fursona, because they start validating that personality, and they start becoming the person that they, quote, want to be.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that they make that entirely fantasy-based personality, and
That
that's
sounds-
what they act out.
See,
That
I
sounds
wanna-
really positive, actually.
It
Like,
does.
It
so-
does,
it
and I
sounds
want
like
to
a
link
way
this to. I want to link that specific aspect to online video games and that kind of thing.
Exactly, your avatar.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you're creating a personality for yourself in order to express parts of your personality that you normally wouldn't be able to. Like you
But
can.
normally, you don't become that person online.
Some people
you
do
Some
though.
people
stay
do.
awkward.
So, some people do go to the extreme and start to adapt parts of that online personality in their everyday lives. It's rare,
I
but
think
it does
that might
happen.
be one of the dangers
Right.
of the internet and the anonymity that it provides, is that it kind of gives people permission, and also they end up practicing a certain form of behavior, and they end up just getting more and more comfortable with these kind of patterns
And
of,
then it
of
becomes
behavior.
real and they are that.
So if you're like spending like, I don't know, 10 hours of your day trolling online, at some point when I meet you in real life, you're just gonna probably start acting like a troll even in real life. It's just gonna become like your normal form of interaction socially.
Then again, I wouldn't say
I
that.
think that they might be shy and awkward and not be able to express themselves.
I think
Maybe.
computers though are different to the furries. Computers are you're separated from society. You're still it's still a digitally mediated
Right.
conversation between two people.
Yeah, you're still in some sense
socially
technically
isolated.
alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
Whereas
you
with
can't really be
furries-
expelled in the same way.
Exactly. With the furries, you're out, you're
Right.
doing things, you're actually interacting with
Right.
other people.
There's anonymity, yeah, but you are physically with
Exactly.
other
So
people.
you become by being.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
You are that person. You're acting that out. Whereas if you're playing an online avatar, you're just sitting there typing.
Right.
Like mentally, yes, you're that person, but
Right.
you're not actually out interacting with people. Like furries might go for a drink at the end and take off the mask and
Yeah.
meet the actual person, right?
Right.
Whereas with an avatar, you're still separated.
So you have the physical separation. I'm just not convinced that psychologically, the stuff that's going on in your head, like sometimes we get into arguments where we question whether or not everything we experience isn't virtual on some level. And so I can sort of, to me it seems like it's really easy to imagine that in some sense our lives are almost entirely lived inside our head. So what would be the difference between the behaviors that you train yourself to be able to act out, whether you're doing that with virtual people online or you're doing that with real people in person? I'm not sure. Like you're developing and you're practicing attitudes, not just physical interactions or things that might affect physical interactions. So I don't know. I think it's
Fairly similar.
it's
Close
fairly
to same,
similar.
yeah.
I think it would be easy to overestimate the difference.
Are there therapeutical benefits to either developing a fursona or, let's say, in the case of online, massive multiplayer online video games, developing that kind of online avatar for people who are not as socially well-adjusted as others?
Yeah. So like I've just talked mainly about like the potential danger of it, but I think that's not necessarily
The potential danger of what? It's almost like you're suggesting the potential danger of freedom. It's not internet per se. It's being free to do the thing is the danger.
of inhibition or lack of inhibitions.
Right.
Or
That's
something
like
that.
mask to hide behind. Gives you
Right.
Yeah, that's why the
freedom you
internet's
can
such an
hide
asshole
behind.
place. Sorry.
Well, there you go. So we have evidence that anonymity on the internet
Brings out the worst.
has actually bred trolling and like the worst types of attitudes and sort of a breakdown of even basic kind of social niceties and stuff like that. Like I think I don't have any numbers on this, but it seems to me that cynicism is more rampant now than it.
Yeah, but if you're furry and you're being an ass, you can still get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
Right,
Like, that
yeah,
guy's
yeah,
stretch is
exactly.
rough. Let's
Exactly.
push him.
You can still be ostracized from the group that you've chosen, whereas
Yes.
online you can just pop up whenever. And
That's
be a
right.
persona. Yeah.
Bernie the purple
I think
dinosaurs.
that's
and
the
Just
way
make a
it
different
works.
handle or
Exactly,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah,
Somebody
But
can still clock you if you're being
sure.
not very nice.
But like one of the rules of boxing is that the only punch that hurts is the one that you don't see coming. So if you decide to go out for your furry outing one day and you say, okay, today I'm going to use my anonymity to act like an asshole, and I'm probably going to get punched in the face. Well, that's only going to hurt you for that one outing. You're going to go out the next day, you might have a different furry costume. So it's just like changing your handle online or something. But I don't want to also exaggerate the negative side of it, because I think, like we said right at the beginning, that this actually sounds like something that could be really positive. You know, people actually self-actualizing and actually bettering themselves,
Right.
without the anxiety or whatever that's attached to.
Yeah, because at its core, it's just like any other fandom.
Yeah.
If you think about it, right? Like these people are just expressing their appreciation for this type of lifestyle, whereas Star Trek fans would dress up in their costumes and go to Star Trek conventions. Same for Star Wars fans and whatever. The same for any other type of fandom. You have people who are so dedicated to that type of expression that they will, they'll express in any kind of way. Yeah, so I just think it does have its positives.
as a fandom, it's really kind of neat because it is so decentralized. Like if you're a Harry Potter fan, for example, there's a canon. Like you can't really step outside the canon of a Harry.
Canon.
There's no furry canon. You can be
Right.
whatever you want to be.
Right.
There is no right or wrong.
Like I could show up as a stuffed hot dog and
Yeah.
like, you accept me, I scritch well. You know?
Exactly. That's what
I have my
He's
hot
stuck
dog
in the
juices I'm
script.
gonna spray on you. You know.
Damn, this guy scritches.
it's good. Yeah, it's kind of a neat fandom actually if you think about that one.
Yeah, it does get a bad rap.
It
In
does.
a lot of ways. Like the predominant image of furries.
It's sexual deviance.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. And this was your reaction, Gloria, when I brought it up. You were like kind of creeped out by it.
I am.
Well, it's different, right?
Like
Anything different is creepy. Like
But-
S&M is creepy to a lot of people.
Not to me.
Why?
Yeah, no, that was actually
Unless
the
you've been
example that you
exposed.
used.
Right.
Unless you've been exposed to it, seeing somebody, or like pony play, seeing somebody walk around in leather pony outfits, it's going to freak you out. Because it's not normally your thing. But when you start meeting the people and you realize some of these are like high-powered lawyers and stuff,
Yeah.
then you just kind of understand more of the psychology behind it.
Right.
I guess it's really the association to childhood, though. Eh?
But
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
thing.
that kind of innocence.
Like the-
Right.
There's almost a nostalgia.
That's
element.
that
That's the
was-
creepy.
That's the creepy for
Okay.
me. Like, I feel
Well,
like
because yeah, go ahead.
I feel like it's, I associate these furry animals like they're supposed to be entertaining children, and it just creeps me out. Like it.
It's just
I
too.
know.
It's just too weird to fathom this kind of rapprochement of the infantile sphere with the grown up adult and
Right.
sexual sphere.
Right. Exactly.
Right, it reeks, and especially with the age. The age being 18 to 26, it's like that one last clinging to childhood. I will
Right.
dress up now as my tutu,
Yeah.
and go out there and fuck.
And go out there and fuck.
Oh,
And
sorry,
is
I'm
that-
imagining it as a sexual thing, and it's not.
But
Not-
that's the
it's
thing.
not necessarily.
I
Right,
wasn't
right.
sure if it was. Like, is it? And how do they do it? And
Like to some people, yeah, it is a sexual thing, but for the vast majority, it's just that it's that self-expression and the seeking of some
but
type of
I
acceptance.
didn't know all these things at first, so now I'm more aware. So
Less frightened,
know.
less creeped out by it.
less creeped out.
Right.
Still a
But
little bit creeped
I
out.
thought that
Still
it
different.
was more of a sexual thing. I thought it was like 50%. Like that it was like it wasn't an acceptance thing. That it wasn't, a positive thing, or not that it wasn't a positive thing. That it wasn't.
It was deviance.
Yeah, I thought it wasn't. It's not even about deviance. It was just creepy for me. Like, it was just creepy. It just made me feel some kind of way inside right here. So
Yeah.
it just I don't know. Like I said, I associated with childhood and
sexuality.
yeah.
Right, you brought up the people that wear, like adults that wear diapers and stuff like that.
Right.
Like, you felt it comparable to that, that childhood.
Mm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Infantilism.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the need
What
to
is-
be
what is
it called?
infantilism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
That's another.
I don't
CSI.
know.
But the thing is, there I'm not sure that those adult diaper wearing people who explicitly make that about a sex thing, that's like that doesn't have the redeeming qualities of
Again, though,
the furry phenomenon, which seems to be predominantly
now-
not about.
Yeah, but
now
no,
that I
did-
know all these
Yeah.
things too, it's
Yeah,
really opened
with
my
reference
eyes.
specifically to the issue of infantilism, again, part of it is a sexual thing, but for others, it's about finding that part of childhood that they were never able to identify with for whatever reason. I remember watching one case specifically on this documentary on TLC about infantilism, where the guy, he was a well-adjusted individual, productive member of society, but he went through a horrendous childhood. He was abused. He never, he was never loved by his mother. His father left him when he was really young, and he never had the comfort of being a child. So now that he had his life established, he went out and found a quote-unquote nanny to take care of him, and they would act out that childhood. He would dress up as an infant. He made a giant crib for himself. And he would cuddle with the stuffed animal and be taken care of. Like
Feeling really brown to you.
Just like at my place, the crib at my place, right, Gloria? The crib.
So for some people, it is a way of finding that type of comfort. the immediate reaction.
Like Michael Jackson, right? Who
This is
apparently
totally what I'm thinking. Michael
was like
Jackson.
robbed of a childhood because he's working from the age of 5
Yeah.
with his dad like cracking the whip.
Yeah, the immediate reaction is, oh my god, that is fucking creepy, right?
Yeah.
But it's not harming anybody else, so to each his
No,
own.
it's not. You're right.
Yeah.
It's not. But
no, I totally understand the
it's
initial, oh my god,
It's
reaction.
not a
Initial creep.
comfortable thing to think about.
Yeah.
No, it's just
Yeah, like people.
S&M is much more comfortable.
To some people. Like
To
if-
some
if-
people, yeah. To other people,
For me,
they get
for
that.
me, I'm saying.
They get at least as much of a creep factor from
Exactly.
S&M
Leather is
than-
sexy. That's what
I come from like a very conservative blue collar family. If any of them saw anything like that, they'd be freaking right out.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I wonder
come from-
about statistics that have been done on the political leanings of these particular different kind of subcultures, and I almost have an inkling that that conservatives might have a bigger representation than liberals among the S&M.
That's
type
really
of
interesting,
communities.
yeah, because you can almost make that correlation where the most closeted conservatives
Right.
are trying to find an outlet with which to express themselves
That's fair.
in a situation
Yeah.
where they normally wouldn't be able to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think
Get it out of
I
the
would be.
system.
I don't know any of the statistics either, but
Yeah.
I would be tempted to agree with that.
So we can make up statistics and just pretend. Like you don't need facts.
75% of
Don't you
statistics
guys
are made
know?
up on the spot.
40% of people know that to be true.
There's a
60% of the time, it works every time.
40?
I did say 40.
40.
It's a Simpsons reference. Come on, come on. Yeah,
Oh, and I thought you were clever.
I thought so too, but I'm really not. Which takes us to bronies.
There we go, yeah.
Okay, but so in general though, furries, there's like an identity.
It's
something
all about
going on.
identity.
Yeah, right.
It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
An identity
centric.
problem, I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Even.
Yeah, it's an acceptance thing. It's an identity thing. It's a self-expression thing. Just like any other fandom, essentially.
Or
Like,
subculture.
or subculture, right?
Well, I don't think just like any other fandom. That's the thing. Like we're about to move on to Bronies. I think Bronies is much more representative of a conventional fandom type of thing.
Sure. Well,
even,
yeah.
even though it gets lumped in with some deeper type of identity thing like furries, but I don't think it actually has some of those things. And so furries seems to be like the whole identity thing, gender identity, personas, and like things like I'm in a human body now, but I feel like I should actually be a fox or something like that. You know, that's
That's
not
not
something-
small percentage of them.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
like was the article like 2% or something? It was a very small percentage
Okay.
of the people who identified more as it was a different term too. It was like Therian or something like that.
Therian.
Therian, that's
Oh.
it.
Where they have like
That's-
an animal soul. or
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a
Oh,
totally
their
other
spirit
sub,
animal?
sub part of that subculture.
Okay.
It's not even
They're
spirit
the
animal.
weirdos
It's
of
they they identify as a wolf.
Wow.
Okay.
You know, it's going beyond the persona.
Yeah.
It's I am a wolf trapped in a human's
Right.
body kind of thing.
Yeah.
I knew a guy like that.
Have you guys been watching Glow?
No. Is it good?
Glow is like the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling. It's this Netflix show with Mark Maron and
But he's narrating the thing, or he's
and not
hosting the thing?
not Brie Larson, but who's the girl from Community? Brie something. Alison Brie.
Alison Brie.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's this really great show anyway. I definitely recommend it. And there's a character in there that is like their spirit is a wolf.
And you said this is on Netflix?
Yeah.
So
I
if,
would check that out.
If Netflix is listening and would like to sponsor the podcast,
Exactly.
Throwing money everywhere, anyways, right? Scorsese, really?
yeah, come on, throw some money our way. We can
Death
definitely
Note.
use it.
We'll take the budget from that.
Yeah.
Right, so bronies, another type of fandom. So for anyone who's not in the know about bronies, these are the My Little Pony bros, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Typical dudes who really love this new iteration or the original iteration of My Little Pony and get together, again, at conventions or whatever, to celebrate that particular fandom.
My Little Pony freaked me out as a child. Same with the Care Bears.
Yeah. The new incarnation of the cartoon is quite different from the original cartoon, and the bronies don't actually. They kind of disavow the original cartoon from the 80s.
Really?
It is about the new one.
It's all about the new one.
Really?
And it is.
Why is that?
Okay, so what
It's
what
just
did they
better.
get out of it? Why did they follow it? I didn't do a lot of research on bronies, so enlighten us.
Okay, so what I've heard them say is that they describe the show in very idealistic terms. They say that so on the cartoon there's like 6 characters that are somewhat archetypal. Some of the one of the characters is kind of about ego and stuff like that, and another character is all about generosity, and another character is just about I don't know, kindness or something like they have these specific qualities, right? Each one, and
Now, is that done by design, or is that just something they observed about the show?
I guess it's kind of by design that
Okay.
the show is written that way, to have like these
Sure.
kind of basic fundamental kind of characters that have a hard and fast kind of moral center or something, and the themes that are discussed in each episode are sort of themes that kind of teach about, like, have a moral have some kind of a moral lesson to them, and there's an arc and stuff like that. So to these bronies, they see this show as also so there's sort of like a simplicity to this kind of moral sort of a moral simplicity to the show, and that's what they seem to latch on to. One of the bronies that I saw talking in one documentary I watched was an Iraq war vet. The guy signed up for the army at 17.
Are we talking Iraq War 1 or 2 here?
No, it would be 2.
Okay.
Yeah. And because the show didn't exist until
Yeah, you're right.
more recently. So anyway, at the age of 18, he was already in Iraq in the theater of war and stuff.
Messy war.
Yeah, messy war. So apparently, when the guy came back, he suffered from depression and probably PTSD. And he before he went out, he was like an avid drawer, graphic artist or whatever, as a teenager. You know, as much as a teenager can be, I guess. And after he got back, he had completely stopped doing any of that for more than a year until he started watching this cartoon, and apparently it kind of prompted him to start drawing again. He was explicitly just copying the cartoon and drawing characters from the cartoon, and this idea of like a simple moral center and stuff. This kind of helped to relieve the sort of despair and cynicism that came from his PTSD. Like he kind of had like this shattering of hope and stuff from being stuck in a war,
Right.
at such a young age. You know, like he's not really grown up when he's like 17 and joining the army, right? So, so this kind of allowed him to in some sense like recapture that innocence. That would have just completely been shattered by going to war. So that's what this show represented to him, and so a lot of the bronies that were like interviewed in this little documentary were kind of talking on that level about sort of the themes of the show.
Right. So we're seeing a lot of common threads here in terms of like furries and bronies specifically, and reliving or kind of expressing those parts of childhood that they otherwise would never have been able to express or had lost in some way, by going to war or through some other kind of trauma. That's really interesting.
What I find strange is that is the imbalance, the gender imbalance there. That it's almost all guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like aren't women having these same kind of
Attractions to the show?
No, I just mean like
the same type of issues, like why
developmental issues, you know, or
Does it surprise
anxieties
you? Really?
about
Does that
like
surprise you?
about like transitioning.
It's because he's a guy.
I think
can't-
it's because women can have more outlets to express themselves with each other, and men don't. Men keep
particularly
things
when you think
bottled
about a
up
guy in the
inside.
army, right?
Yeah, exactly. They keep things bottled up, and they don't express their emotions, and they don't talk to each other like women do.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And in terms of the LGBTQ community, it's often easier for a woman to be let's say trans or
lesbian.
gay, yeah, exactly where it
Right.
is. For a man, it's still very difficult in our culture today to
Right.
be not heterosexual, to not be a quote man.
Yeah.
Right? It's very difficult.
Yeah, and these bronies, they will talk explicitly about the like what it means to be a man, and like one guy says directly like what it means to be a man is to have an X and a Y chromosome and be a human, right? That's a man. Everything else is fair game. So everything else is kind of bullshit.
Screw the cultural norms.
Exactly.
And so it's almost suggesting the show is representing the lost feminine side that a male may be struggling with or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or being able to show their femininity without society kicking them.
Right.
Because like men can't wear like high heels, or they can't wear fabulous clothes even though they're heterosexual.
You
right?
can,
They'll be
you
made
can,
fun of.
boys, you
Yeah.
can.
So bronies too, they're having like their own conventions. They're having just
Right.
like the furries have, but specifically My Little Pony
Yeah.
centered. And they the funny thing is that the show is completely marketed and engineered towards little girls,
Right.
towards kids who are girls. And all of the toys and stuff that that can be bought, they're all
Pink.
like
They're
pink
pink and purple and
and
sparkly and awesome.
and
I think in a way they're like the bronies are directly co-opting that, in order to express their more feminine side. They're going directly for that because it
but to
being,
some extent they're lamenting the fact that that these themes and the value that they pull out of the show, it's kind of being pigeonholed or reinforced as being
Feminine.
an exclusively feminine thing,
yeah, like
or a thing that's for girls.
right. So
and a lot of these bronies are kind of pushing back against that, and
that's what I mean. Like they're pushing back against it by taking that onto themselves and expressing it as their fandom of choice.
Yeah.
And-
But to some extent, they'd like the marketing to change a little bit,
Sure,
to be
yeah.
a little bit more sort of gender neutral and or inclusive.
Have you guys tried watching the
Something
show
that
at
might
all?
not be a
Or
girl.
no?
I've never seen. I used to watch the originals as a kid
Right.
because I'm a kid and I'm watching the show about animated ponies and I'm like, oh my god. So yeah.
I only caught a few minutes of the first episode.
Well,
it's on Netflix.
I watched a couple of episodes a while back after I saw probably the same documentary that you saw, the Bronies documentary. Bronies, the documentary.
Yeah, so I saw that documentary a long time ago, and then this week I caught this other documentary that the band Hey Ocean. There's a band called Hey Ocean, and the lead singer of that band is actually one of the voices, or actually the voice of two characters on the cartoon.
Oh.
So this documentary kind of followed her around as she was going to attend a Brony convention.
Well, in the two episodes that I watched, there is an element of quality. Like, it does seem to be a pretty good children's show. Like, it ain't KU,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, you don't
Yeah.
hate these people. It's well done, and
Yeah, I would
it
say
does
it's one
seem
of
to
the better
be
cartoons.
it does seem to be like
the-
in a sense a labor of love sort of thing. You know what I mean? There was some love injected into this thing, you know. And in a lot of children's stuff, you don't see that as much anymore. You
No,
know,
it's
not
all
everything is Jim
farts.
Henson.
I really appreciate the angle that there's like a rejection of cynicism there, and you know how most humor nowadays is kind of meta humor, and it's all about like
The
being
SpongeBob
being
stuff.
ironic and that kind of bullshit, like being too clever by half kind of shit, and that gets on my nerves too. So I really dig this sort of more earnest kind of trend
The
that
more
these guys
simple
are
kind
going
of
for.
direct messaging instead
Yeah.
of like no, I can understand that.
But again, like furries, I think that's kind of where the creep factor comes in. It's marketed towards young girls, and it's a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
So the immediate pushback is like, you guys are freaks.
You guys are
What?
pedophiles.
Yeah, you don't belong in this sphere here.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you must be a pedophile. That's I don't know. But that's kind of.
So to conclude, bronies are pedophiles.
So
That's the
what?
point we're
See,
trying to.
We're laughing here, people. We're not serious.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, this acceptance is that's our issues.
It is. It's
not
it's
their
definitely
issues.
It seems
societal
like
thing.
that. Yeah, it's a totally subjective.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you get the same gut reaction from bronies as you do with
Well,
furries?
I mean, it's not I don't associate, bronies pedophiles or whatnot. But I do get the same gut reaction. Yes,
That
it's
same
creepy.
ick factor?
It's creepy. But after, again, once I hear the facts, and that Iraq story was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was
Well,
cool.
John Rambo, the next Rambo film, Rambo 5, is going to be the story of him being a brony to
I thought you were
conquer
serious.
PTSD.
I'm like, what?
They've decided, no, the other one was really violent, so they've decided to take a different way. Anyways, it's in pre-production right now.
I think the general lesson is subcultures, while might be creepy, you need to kind of look under the surface to figure them out.
Well, it's like that
Exactly.
that old aphorism, familiarity breeds contempt. It seems like actually it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And there's research to show this on a lot of different levels, like even when it comes to like multiculturalism and stuff like that.
Racism,
There's a
yeah.
lot more xenophobia the less exposure you have to anybody who's not completely conforming to your very narrow
And the thing is
parochial
that
kind of
I find myself
circumstance.
like one of the least judgmental people, and I hate the fact that this bothered me. Like it was bothering me that this was bothering me. So, I'm glad that, I was presented with these facts, and
You feel better about it now? You're
Yeah.
more at ease? Like
Yes.
right now,
Wow.
if Gilles were to come out and go, yes, I am brony, it is true. I'm a brony. I enjoy anal fisting, and I'm
well,
a furry
anal
as well.
fisting is okay.
Yeah, see, you're fine with anal fisting, but bronies, I don't know.
I mean, aside from the fact that it might hurt at least the first few times, I suppose it's okay.
Well, now I know what to get you for Christmas.
You just need to relax.
It's okay.
Just
I've got
relax.
my
Coffee
smooth
dildo.
thermos here.
Look at
There,
the
my
Thor.
coffee dildo.
There you go.
I can just use that. No need to spend the extra money.
So is
Get
this
the
from
Thors, put a lampshade on it.
it's from Bridgehead?
Plus, considering our last episode, I'm trying to reduce my my waste, and so reusing is a big repurposing and reusing
Oh,
is
right,
a big
yeah.
part of it.
We
So
talked about that.
I'm
Quite a bit.
definitely gonna start giving my thermos double duty now, just so.
Plus, it keeps it warmer.
It does keep it warmer. It'll keep it
Dual
warm.
purpose.
There you go.
Oh my god.
Anyway,
Anyway.
sidebar.
Yeah, there's a lot of societal pushback towards these two issues. Again, because the opposite is true of familiarity breeds contempt. Lack of familiarity definitely breeds contempt in this case.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the psychology behind it is really interesting if you just dig past the surface. Like the things we just talked about, finding acceptance, the expression of inner childhood, that kind of thing. But let's talk about the pushback for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think at some point the furry or brony subcultures can become normalized and will be a little bit more accepted within society than they are today?
I think it could. I think it could be to the same extent that that Trekkies have become sort of cool, or even just like comic book geeks and Comic-Con and stuff like that.
Or like geek culture in general?
Geek culture in general, like the word geek itself has a very negative origin, right? They used to
biting off the
literally
chickens'
mean
heads.
like you're a fucking creep.
Yeah, you're a chicken eater, chicken head eater.
Yeah,
That's
there you go.
the original the etymology of the word geek was from the sideshow world, where a geek was someone who would bite the head off a chicken.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah,
the caged person that
Yeah.
was crazy and right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's a good horror movie called
From the
Luther the
Circus
Geek.
Geek.
You can find it anywhere.
Yeah, circus
Luther the
geek. There you go.
Luther the Geek, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like geek culture is.
Something.
Wasn't there a movie called Freaks?
Yeah.
I think as well,
Yeah.
which is all about these circus geeks and freaks, and
I don't know
and
if there was
everybody is like semi-deformed.
Well,
in
the
some
geek
way.
is that particular role though amongst the freaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there was a geek in Freaks.
I don't know.
That makes
I don't
Freaks and
think
Geeks
so.
make a lot more sense as a TV title.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the word geek was a derogatory term, like after the original term came out, to beat people up in high school with. I'm fucking geek. Same as with nerds, right? But geek culture made a comeback and now is widely accepted within society. Things like Comic-Con have taken off. Cosplayers in general are, more accepted than they used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be that if you dressed up in a costume and went to a convention, you're labeled as a fucking nerd and,
Yeah.
teased mercilessly. Now it's something almost to be lauded.
I mean, Bill Shatner himself shit heavily on convention
I think he
goers
just
in
shits
the
heavily.
early days.
Well, yeah, like Shatner does shit on everything in general.
He shits
these
heavily.
days.
William Shatner, everyone shits heavily.
So Shatner, if we publish this on Twitter, he'll probably attack us.
His
if
name's
he hears the show.
Shatner.
I mean,
Come on.
I love Shatner. I love Shatner now, but that was something that happened.
Yeah, for sure. His name is Shatner.
I never thought of that.
Me neither.
So clever. So
So
Very
clever.
clever.
But yeah, like I don't know if it might take a while for furries and bronies to become as accepted as general geekdom.
I think they're both very extreme cases.
They are,
Yeah.
which
Like-
is
Well, right. They'd have to.
Superhero is big muscled dudes kicking the crap out of each other. Like that's easy to make
exactly.
mainstream. Same thing with cosplay. You hot chicks dressed up as Leia the Slave Girl. Like it's not hard to market that.
Yeah.
Whereas
Right.
both of those other two, those are pretty extreme examples.
Yeah. But I mean, like
Frumpy furry costumes.
Yeah.
Sure. What strikes me also about this whole thing, though, is that we're talking about like males like 18 to 27 or something like that that are predominantly in like these brony kind of movements and stuff. And I can't help but think of how 30 is the new 20. So basically, adolescence is just being like stretched out, extended now, and I think this is just like a symptom of that.
Probably a symptom of a lot of things, eh?
And I think as time goes on, if this persists as part of like the human experience or the average kind of human developmental template, if it persists that that
Get out the
adolescence
conveyor
goes
belts,
up,
everyone.
goes up to like 30 years old, then eventually it really will just seem normal that, of course, 25-year-old quote-unquote adolescent is still watching adolescent shit.
But yeah, I think we're seeing a very different phenomenon, especially with young men. There's that generation of lost boys, which is about my age, so somewhere in like I said, 18 to about 27. They're not going to university. They're not getting any sort of post-secondary degrees.
Right.
They're not getting high-paying jobs. Like the women of my generation are outperforming the men hugely.
Yeah.
And nobody knows what these boys are doing. And again, you're having a rewrite of what it means to be male. You're now encouraged to be more of a father, more of a hands-on father. You're encouraged to do the housework. You're encouraged to do this and that, right? So it's a very very lost and
there's almost a
fluid
pendulum
generation.
swing actually, where rather than going towards an equality of the sexes in their roles in society, we're actually just seeing men and women trade the unequal roles that they had back in the 50s, you know?
Yeah, but that's how humans do
it's
things.
like it's tending toward that.
Yeah.
So there's like a pendulum swing effect rather than
An
just
equalizing effect.
a straight up correction
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
imbalance, right?
Humans don't do that. We pendulum on everything.
Yeah, on everything. Yes.
We don't do something. We do everything we possibly can, and then it sort of adjusts itself.
Yeah,
over
the
time.
whole point should be to reject the reactionary impulses, lower impulses of our nature. I think, like as much as we're capable of analyzing things that are going on around us, and like that's kind of the special thing about humans that other animals don't have. You know, I think the whole point is to be able to take that shit into account and mitigate the pendulum swinging.
Right.
But that,
But we don't.
Right. That
But
we don't.
yeah, no, we don't, because like our base nature is to react to things immediately. We don't take time to like think about it, because due to evolutionary biology, if we take too long to think about something, we die.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a holdover from our
False positives are safer than
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just like we're operating
modern
software on really ancient hardware.
Hardware, yeah.
You know, we evolved to escape lions in the Serengeti, not to analyze what kind of lion it is that's coming at us at 100 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So yeah, just to back up your point.
I think that's why we're getting,
Geeks.
I think that's why we're getting so much of a shift in identity politics nowadays. Like tattoos are becoming much more prevalent. They're much more socially acceptable. Same thing with the transgender community. We're shifting a lot on who we are, because our generation is redefining what it means to be male, female, human.
I'm gonna
working.
actually you on the tattoo thing. Actually, the generation just coming up is rejecting tattoos more than.
Oh, really?
accepting. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This was a case study that we did in our PR class.
So it's already peaked.
So my generation's gonna be
Yeah, like the millennials
the tattoo part of
are on the
culture.
downswing of the acceptance of tattoos. So the next generation coming after them is just flat out like, no, why? You know, I don't want to do that. You know,
Yeah.
fuck the tattoos, man. Fuck your society, or whatever. I don't know what the exact reasoning is behind it, but it's they're more.
We're getting a good glimpse of how you feel about them, though, right?
Yeah, fuck you, man.
Well, I kind of think that to some extent, tattoos.
I don't blame them.
I think tattoos have become a sort of a. They've kind of been appropriated inauthentically by like higher classes or economic classes.
Yeah.
Whereas originally it was like a sign that
It was a rejection or like some kind of. Yeah, it was a fuck you to the man, really.
yeah, that kind of thing, or like getting tattoos in the military
Yeah,
or in
yeah.
prison or whatever.
Right.
Whereas now tattoos have been like I guess the grittiness of that has been appropriated by baristas.
Right.
And
They've been hipsterized.
And everybody's got fucking tattoo sleeves going.
Yeah.
And neck
That's right.
tattoos and suddenly, you know, the
The edginess.
the edginess is
gone.
definitely getting dulled.
Yeah, it's more like now you look at them, a fucking hipster with another sleeve tattoo.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Where's my triple large macchiato, whatever? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't order coffee at Starbucks.
I'll take a large coffee. I mean, a venti,
There's no such
I just
thing
want
as
a
the word
frickin'
large
coffee.
at Starbucks to begin with.
See, I don't know. I don't know.
I point that one. I'll
Yeah.
take that size.
Just caffeine. I don't give. What's in it? I just want caffeine, man.
Do you guys have bagels? Can I have a bagel, maybe?
Do they
no?
have bagels?
I don't know. I don't know. Do they?
They have fancy bagels.
Do they?
Yeah, like cheese and shit.
Sandwiches and
like-
stuff.
Cheesy.
Yeah, cheesy bagels. Yeah.
So Starbucks, if you want to sponsor the show, stop ragging on you.
Your ordering is weird, but your bagels are good.
I love that our running gag of requesting sponsorship seems to have devolved to only doing it with the people who we're kind of shitting on. the ones that we start ragging on spontaneously, then we ask them.
Well, who or what do we
I love
not
that.
shit on? We're pretty much shitting on each other.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah,
Start with
And
Jenny.
now at you, we're shitting at you now through the microphone.
yeah. There you go.
We started with Jenny McCarthy on the vaccination episode.
Ugh.
Oh yeah, right.
That was our first shit on. Please sponsor us.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess it didn't devolve. It just
No, it
started
just started that way.
It didn't evolve. No. It was pure.
Oh, God. Yeah. So, closing thoughts on the issues of. Let's go around the table here. Closing thoughts on bronies and or furries. Bree, you can start off.
Like I said, like any subculture, dig beneath the initial that is freaking weird kind of reaction, and they're kind of normal people underneath.
Yeah.
Usually, relatively normal.
Yeah, but as you seem to be indicating earlier too, I think it's worth acknowledging that there might be some kind of irreconcilable thing there about like connecting things that are proper to the childhood domain with adult sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So, insofar as either of these movements contain a sexual component, I think that might be an insurmountable kind of problem with those specific movements.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And there's small proportions of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I
But
said
that's
so
what the
far.
media
Yeah.
focuses on. because-
Yeah,
Exactly, yeah.
exactly because of that. I don't think we'll see the normalization of
No.
either of these cultures anytime soon.
Well, we would need
Yeah,
some
and
sort of
that's something
popularization
that like
of it.
Comic-Con and Trekkies never had to deal with.
No.
Like, for example, if suddenly Prince Harry came out and went, you know what, I'm a furry and a brony, suddenly, pow, that shit would be like
Yeah.
the biggest
Yeah,
thing
you're
in the
right,
world.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It really just needs it to be popularized. Just like
Yeah.
with the last episode, we were talking about Einstein not being able to accept that theory of the Big Bang because it was presented to him by a priest physicist, and who went and showed him the math and then couldn't accept it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There has to be that
Yeah.
emotional element, right? The acceptance part has to come
Right.
from. I don't know.
Yeah, so that goes more to the familiarity brings.
Yeah.
affection.
Brings
Or
acceptance.
maybe if more
Brings
shows
acceptance.
like CSI or you know.
Yeah, but they rag hard on furries.
Oh, do they?
Fur and Loathing?
See, I was
In-
gonna
in-
say
yes,
that.
It's
I
a
was
comedy
gonna-
episode, sort of.
I was gonna say
The episode
if
was
they-
called
if-
Fur and Loathing.
Yeah, it was Fur and Loathing.
Really?
Fur and Loathing.
It's Fur and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Nice.
Because I thought if they presented in a positive light,
Yep.
or if they
Yeah.
They
didn't.
showed only the sexual aspect of it. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
90%
it was
of that
overly
show was the
sexualized,
sexual
you're right.
aspect.
Okay.
Those Law
So-
and Order and CSI type shows, they tend to take these like pulled from the headlines kind of things.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, that's
they
exactly
usually
what they're
do the
doing,
more
yeah.
sensational negative spin on
Bones
whatever
is
it
the
is.
worst for that.
I was
Oh, yeah,
gonna
Bones
say
is pretty
Bones
bad,
Bones.
is
yeah.
I
terrible.
was gonna
Bones is
say-
so traditionally heterosexual
Right.
white America.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of, yeah.
they are.
So
So
big
you-
fuck you to Bones if you want to sponsor us.
You want to sponsor us, please, you fucking asshole?
But Luke, you did bring up an interesting point, though. Is if some major personality were to come out, either as a furry or to advocate on behalf of the furry community,
Prince
it would
Harry,
take
man.
off, right?
Prince Harry, spread the rumor, man.
Yeah, well,
He's a
like
brony.
Ginger furry.
He's got Harry in his name.
he's got Harry in his name. Prince Furball or
So
something.
Queen of England, if you want to sponsor us, we'd like your son.
We could really use some new microphones,
Wow.
really. I mean, come on.
Really. There's some gold-plated microphones from the Royal Palace.
Nice.
Gilles, closing thoughts on the issue?
I think I've said my piece.
You have. Okay, then fine. We'll skip you, Luke.
Well, I like that. Yeah, I think I said my bit with the acceptance thing there. So, education is acceptance, right? The more we talk about this stuff, the more openly we talk about everything, the less we'll have identity issues, and
Yep.
the less we'll need bronies and furries and.
So you think it really comes down to like preaching acceptance early on in schools and like in childhood and whatever?
Well,
Would that be fair?
spread the love in general. You
Yeah.
know, I'm all about that. So yeah.
As long as you're not hurting somebody else, do whatever the hell you want. If it makes you happy, it's healthy, do it.
You know, there's something to be said for this idea that, you know, Gilles brought up earlier that internet has brought out trolling.
Yeah.
But, or that Trump has brought out the racists, you know, and stuff like that. There's a good side because we also bring out the seeing of the trolling and recognizing and, in a sense, knowing that that's now there. You know what I mean? Perhaps it's breeding it, but it's also breeding the antithesis of that, which is the noticing of it and the oh, what are we going to do with that?
The
Not be
crying
that.
of it.
Like the repulsion from it.
I'm going to start by
See.
saying I don't see any positives to Trump, but you're right.
Well, I don't know.
know.
Internationally, like a lot of the really far right, like in Europe, for example, a lot of the really far right parties that had shot up in popularity, as soon as Trump became a thing and people started to realize that ain't what we want, they kind of went
No,
down.
that's true. That's
I'm
true.
cool with that. Europe was starting to look a little freaky
Yeah,
for a little while.
a little bit.
France, Germany, really far right parties.
Yeah. And now Germany's doing well.
Yeah.
Chancellor Merkel's looking pretty good to win the election on the 24th.
Everybody's
So
looking at the
yeah.
states going, good.
We don't
We're
want
good.
that.
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
No.
Yeah. Gloria, any closing thoughts on the issue?
Well, I guess it's nice to see that there's an outlet, I guess, for acceptance, and you know, like you said, you know, look beneath the surface, and instead of, you know, looking at it as sexual deviance, it's, you know, a place to look for acceptance, and
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Anal fisters unite.
Oh, God.
AFU? Anal Fisters United?
AFU.
AFU.
Canadian swear. Hey,
Yeah.
AFU.
Hey, AFU! Love you too, man.
F you, eh?
I guess I learned a lot though, for sure.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
like
Like,
in
I
this
mean,
time right here.
I feel, yes, I did, and it's funny because, like, I'm glad I did, because I feel like it was bothering me that I felt judgy.
You felt,
I felt judgy.
yeah,
so-
yeah.
And it bothered me that I was feeling that judgy. I mean, it still is a little, you know, creepy, but now, you know, but now I understand the motivations and why, and it doesn't seem sexual.
Yeah.
The furries, it's not like, I don't know, I don't see them like the whole reason, the whole reason they're getting together. It doesn't seem
Right, like when Mark is seeing them outside gathering
Yeah,
around for a photo
exactly.
holding up a banner, they're not like rubbing each other's genitals while
Exactly.
doing it. So,
exactly.
they're just hanging out in their outfits.
It seems like it seems a whole like basically it's all about acceptance and
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Critical Junction, changing people's lives. For good.
Accept the furries,
For good.
accept the bronies.
There you go.
Rambo, you can do it.
So, furries, if you want to sponsor the show after we corrected some
My Little
misconceptions.
Pony.
There we go, yeah. So yeah, I think we corrected a lot of misconceptions today. Certainly, I don't think we're going to change everyone's mind with what we just discussed, but at least, if we can reach a few people and make them realize that it's not all horrifying people rubbing their genitals against each other in public.
I quite enjoy that. I mean,
It's a good genital to rub is,
No judgment.
yeah. But, yeah.
thank you for accepting me.
We accept you. All
Thank
of
you.
I think you should not do it anonymously.
It's a public genital
Masked
rubbing.
with the,
Anonymously. Yeah.
We'll
Should
rubbing
do
my
it.
get you a
genitals.
little
Right.
puppy
I
mask.
should advertise it.
Yes, exactly.
There will be a genital rubbing on next Thursday
Yeah.
in front of Parliament Hill, I guess.
On Parliament Hill.
I'm just thinking
At the
somewhere.
Eternal Flame.
Oh
That
god.
would creep all the politicians out so hard.
That's
Bunch of
a
people just
I'm
it's a
pretty.
form of protest. I don't know against what, but it's
Accept.
Okay.
acceptance.
Okay.
I'm protesting acceptance now. Pendulum swinging.
Yeah, well. Alright. This has been Critical Junction episode 23. I'm Mark.
I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
Thank you to Bree and Gloria for being here today. Thanks, guys. As always, thanks for listening, and we will catch you again next time.